session, we will discuss about MVC architecture, Smarty design pattern, and a small application using MVC architecture and Smarty. First, let us move to MVC architecture. The model view controller is a commonly used and powerful architecture for graphical user interfaces. The MVC paradigm is a way of breaking an application or even just a piece of an application's interface into three parts. Those are model, view, and the controller. MVC was originally developed to map the traditional input, processing, output roles into the graphical user interface realm. Input, processing, output, controller, model, view. For every application, we need input, processing, and output. Controller takes care of input, model takes care of processing, and view takes care of output. That we will discuss in developing the application. The user input, the modeling of external world, and the visual feedback to the user are separated and handled by model, viewport, and controller objects. Controller. The controller interprets mouse and keyboard inputs from the user and maps these user actions into commands that are sent to the model and viewport to effect the appropriate change. Model. The model manages one or more data elements, responds to queries about its state, and responds to instructions to change state. View. The viewport manages a rectangular area of display and responsible for presenting data to the user through a combination of graphics and text. MVC in PHP. PHP.MVC implements the model view controller and encourages application design. This design model allows the web page or the other contents to be mostly separated from the internal application code, making it easier for designers and programmers to focus on their respective areas of expertise. Now, let us move to Smarty. Smarty is a template engine for PHP. More specifically, it facilitates a manageable way to separate application logic and content from its presentation. This is the best described in a situation where the application programmer and the template designer play different roles or in most cases are not the same person. Requirements. Smarty requires a web server running PHP 4.0.6 or later. Basic installation. Install the Smarty library files which are in the library directory of the distribution. These are the PHP files that you should not edit and they are shared among all applications and they only get updated when you upgrade to a new version of Smarty. Now let us move to the development of a small application using PHP, MVC and Smarty design pattern. For that we need Smarty library files. If you want to connect to the database, ADODB library files, and we have to configure the httpd.conf file, and we have to create one user with all the permissions 777 that we will see now. Afterwards we go to configure the files and including the Smarty library files. First let us move to root directory. Now we are in root directory. Add user, some username, in root directory. Now we have username, that is a user. In the user we need to create a directory, that is public_html. In that public_html also we need to create two directories. Those are templates and templates_c. Make directory templates, cd username. Let us create a user freshly now. That user should be created in home directory, cd home. Now we are in home directory. Here create a user, some name, user1. Now user1 is created. In this user1 you have to create a directory called public_html. In user1 directory, public_html is a directory. Again in this also we have to create two directories, templates and templates_c. Make directory templates and make directory templates_c. Now we have to change the permissions that we see. Go to home directory. Right now we are in home directory. List out all the users. User 1 is here. Now we have to change its permission settings. Change mode 777. First we look at the permissions right now. User 1 D is a directory. RWX read write execution permissions for the owner, no permissions for group and others. Now we have to change these permissions as RWX. Change mode 777 user 1. If you give like this, the permissions are only for user 1 user 1 directory. If you want to change permissions for all the files in user 1 also, -R. Now let us see the permissions. Here this is the user 1 directory. D stands for directory. First RWX read write execution permissions for the owner, read write execution permissions for the group, read write execution permissions for the others. Till now we have created a user and we changed the permission settings, and now we will have a look at Smarty library, where to put those files and configuring the httpd.conf. First we will go to Smarty library files. All the files ADODB or Smarty library files, some other files should be put in php includes directory. Let's move to directory php, that is in root directory cd php. Now we are in php file. Includes is the directory. In this only we have to put all the library files. cd includes, we are in includes. List out all the files. Yes, we have Smarty library files. If you don't have Smarty library files, you have to download from the website smarty.org and you have to place those files in php includes directory. Now we go to configure the httpd.conf. Right now we are in root directory cd etc. In that httpd is the directory. Again conf is a directory. httpd.conf is the file we are going to modify, we are going to configure. This is the httpd.conf file. Here we have to modify document root, directory root and user directory, that we will see. Here we see the document root home. Why we put home only? Because all the library files are in php includes and our user is in home directory. From that user directory only we can execute our programs. We put all our users in home directory, that's why document root is home. And directory is also home user directory, that is public underscore html. If anything is there other than public html, we need to change it as public underscore html, because we put all our files in public underscore html only. Suppose if you have other root in document root and directory, we should mention that as home directory. Till now we completed configuring the files and including the Smarty library, creating a user. Then we go for developing a sample application. Right now we are in home directory, so that we have to move to our own user cd. The username is mvcdemo cd, that is already created by me and it was given settings 777 like we created in previous section. cd mvcdemo. In this also I created my files, that is public underscore html is also there. In that public underscore html only we need to put all our programming files. Unless now we are going to real structure of MVC and using the Smarty libraries and developing a simple application using Smarty and MVC architecture. Let us have a look at index.php. This sample application divides the business logic and templates, that is view and the controller. Here we write the PHP program to connect to database or something like that, that is the model, and we write some HTML code to be viewed by the users or the internet users, that is the view, and controller is a program that controls both the view and model. Here right now we are in index.php. Index.php here acts as controller. In model view architecture, this index.php is the controller where everything is going on. Suppose if you want to log in different mode, then suppose you seems to be press a button, that means you are performing an action. that is you are doing on the view or the controller, that has to be processed through this index.php only. That means this is the controller of all our application. Here we write code to connect to the Smarty library ADODB connections which are being used in our application, and other PHP files like service mappings. Why we write service mappings.php means the motto of MVC architecture is dividing the program into small pieces in order to give the facilitation to the programmers and designers. Suppose an application, a big application may have designing part, coding part and business logic part, that is database design or something like that. In all the cases one programmer cannot deal with all the things, so that different people may act as programmers there. Then this MEC architecture facilitates them in a good way. Here require once of adodb.inc.php is to include adodb files. Require once smarty.class.php is to include smarty files. Those are in PHP includes directory. Those library files will be included here. And require once service mappings.php is written by the programmer. Service mappings.php is a file, is a program where we will contain all the services of our application program. You create Smarty object in order to use the Smarty library. The next step is creating the Smarty object. Smarty.class.php is a class, so that we need to create a object. And services equal to register. Register is a user defined function. I created register function with two arguments, one is service and other one is that service name. This service must be matched in service mappings.php. Here you see the register is the function which can provide a service to the variable service. This is the variable service. This register provide a service to this variable. Let us move to register function, how it will work and what it returns. Here it is the register function. It takes two arguments, one is service identifier and default service. Service identifier we passed it as service and default service is login. Now we will go to service function, how it will work and what it returns we see. In this register function we have get parameters functions and it returns parameters. Now we will move to get parameters function. Here is the function. I declared two variables, global variables. These are predefined variables, underscore post underscore get. Params is the variable, user defined variable it is, and it is an array. Get parameters get all requested services and their names. From the view, that is from the TPL file, we request our service, either it may be post or get. Post as a key value means that key gets the service we pass it there in register function, and value gets the service name like login. I hope you are getting this point. Post as key value, that key is the word service. and this value is the that service name. It may be login, logout, submit, something like this. Here in our program, dollar value is the login. Right now we passed that value, and this key is service. So this is an associated array. Login is assigned to service. Params of that service is equal to login. Then we go to the calling part of get parameters function, where we call this function in register. Here we call this function. This function returns a service, requested service, that is, and its name, being parameter is an associated array. Okay, then we go to if statement. If params of service identifier means if it is valid service, then return service identifier. If it is valid, then return service identifier, else default service. By default we put one default service. Suppose if it is a real web application, the default service is home page. Here in this example, login is the default service. I told you this service identifier is the word service we passed from the register, we passed from the above code in the calling part, and default service is the login. There we passed the two values. One is here service, here capital letters login. Let us move to the calling part of the register. Now in this service variable we have our requested service and its name. In if we check is this service requested in service mappings or not. Let us move to if statement. Array key exists service mappings. If it is true, that means if it is our service requested is in service mappings, then include service mappings of that service, which service we have in service mappings, that is, and call PHP file and call .php file. This is the corresponding .php file where model is existing. That means we are calling now model. Till now we worked with the controller, that is index. Now we will go to model. I hope you all understood what is this require once and register function, get parameters function, and if statements. Let us have a brief look at all these things once again. This is to include the files and creating the object, being a smarty.class.php is a class. We are calling the register function. This register function is getting requested service and passing this to service variable. If that service is existed in our service mappings class, that is service mappings.php file, include once means go to the model of that particular service. If your service is login, then you have to invoke the .php login.php file. Then you create object. Creating object means we are passing that service and parameters to the template function. Template means that is model, else it is an error message. Register function, service identifier, default service. Service identifier, what we passed there? Just the word service with small letter service, that is, and In default service, login will be placed. Default service, login will be placed. So now we have here service is there, here login is there. Then get parameters. Get parameters possess the parameters and sends them to params variable. If params of the service identifier is exists, then params of return params of service identifier. Service identifier means just the word service. The service will be written to the calling part. Else default service, that is login. Function get parameters. Predefined variables post get params is an array. For each it works like for loop only. Post as key value. In this key we have the word service, and this value we will have login in our program. But in real applications we may have many services, so that according to the context this value will be changed and this key value may be changed. So params of key, params of that service equal to login. Of course, if it is a get one, if it is a get service, then params of key equal to value, return params. In this params we have now service and its name, that is service login. Okay, let us move to model now. In our application, model is vi login.php. Login.php. vi login.php. This is our model login.php. This login function is a constructor here because it has same name as class capital L login, function capital L login, and it takes two parameters, one is params and one is TPL. This TPL is our view, that is template file. From controller we came to model, from this model we go to view. Like this we may come to view to model, model to controller. Like this we have multiple paths. Here TPL display is a predefined function. Here we are passing the login.tpl, that means we are calling the view part now, that is login.tpl, where we put all the HTML code, all these things. I hope you all know how to write the TPL file. Anyway, I will explain once again how to write the TPL file. Now let us move to view. All the templates should be placed in templates directory. Now we move to templates directory. Templates. Now right now we are in templates directory. In this templates directory we save all the .tpl files. Those are the views. This login.tpl is our template file now. lo small l login.tpl. It is our login.tpl file. Liter is the keyword where which allows other than HTML code. Here I write some scripting language to validate login ID and password, that we have to mention in between literals. Otherwise all the HTML code should place as it is. Here starts my table alignment. I hope you all know how to write the HTML code. I created table table row. In each row I have taken these text boxes, labels, login areas and form. That is the form name, login. You all know this how to write this TPL file. Just as it is, you write your HTML code, that's all. Then we move to how to execute this program. To execute this you need a browser. In this case it is Internet Explorer. Here you have to mention your host IP address. If your host is localhost, then localhost. This is my host, and our username preceding with tilde symbol. Our username is P means app, and your controller name, that is index.php, that we discussed at the beginning of the application. Now you get the output. This is, now we are seeing the login area, that is this entire frame. Login area, user ID, password are created with the template, that is view. That means at the ending stage we are watching it, that is the view. After entering some data or to give this output into this browser, we have background process something like model and controller. Model is the business logic, controller is the how to control the flow of the data and flow of the pages. It is very easy to use MVC architecture using Smarty design pattern to develop web applications. Now you might have experienced the ease of use of MVC and Smarty. And what is the necessity of going for MVC and Smarty means, just now you have seen the ease of use and the simplicity of the architecture. Whenever you want to modify particular portions of the application, maybe it is the modification of a TPL file, that is view, or a PHP file, that may be the controller or model, you need not to modify all the program, all the application, that is all TPL files, PHP files and the controller. Just you take another example like news reporter system. In that, one day template may be changed, other day the content may be changed, other day programming logic may be changed, and at the same time if the programmers for these templates, designing templates and writing the program business logic and writing the controller logic may be the different. So in that cases, in this MVC architecture is very useful. Suppose suddenly you want to change your database MySQL to PostgreSQL or PostgreSQL to Oracle, so that you need to modify only the model of the application. You need not to go to model and controller. Suppose you may have situations like changing model. In that cases you can modify directly the model, it won't affect controller and template. That is the main use of this MVC architecture. Now I would like to conclude my application designing, so that with this application designing I hope you all getting into developing your own websites and produce quality products to our country. Goodbye friends, have a nice session.